to the show. And if you're new to the show, thanks for finding me. Today's guest is Lisa Gibert. Lisa is the Chief Executive Officer of Clark College Foundation, the fundraising partner of Clark College. In 2018, Lisa was selected as one of the top fundraising leaders in the country by the Council for Advancement as Support of Education, CASE. She received the CASE Commonfund Institutionally Related Foundation Award, one of fundraising industry's most prestigious national honors, for her 20-year career supporting advancement work at higher education institutions across the country. Under Lisa's leadership for the last 13 years, Clark College Foundation's total assets have increased by $23 million. The scholarship dollars provided to Clark students have tripled, and $40 million have been distributed to the college over the 13 years that she's headed the nonprofit organizations. Lisa joined Clark College Foundation in 1998, serving as the Director of Finance and Administration, Chief Financial Officer, and then Interim President. In January 2005, she was appointed President CEO, and in 2017, the Foundation's Board of Directors adjusted her title to CEO. As CEO, she is responsible for strategic planning, goal setting, and policy development, and works closely with the Foundation's philanthropic partners. She also oversees all Foundation activities and staff, regularly interacts with the Foundation's Board of Directors and partners with Clark College's administration to meet their fundraising needs. Lisa earned her Bachelor of Science degree in Business and Finance from the University of Oregon and a Master's in Business Administration at the University of California at Irvine. She is a certified fundraising executive, and her professional affiliations include the Association of Fundraising Professional, the Southwest Washington Estate Planning Council, and Willamette Valley Development Officers Association. She is a member of the Vancouver Rotary and serves on the Vancouver Rotary Foundation Board of Directors. Lisa also serves on the Commission for Philanthropy at the Council for the Advancement in Support of Education, CASE. An accomplished equestrian, she has shown paint and pinto breeds. She and her late horse, Silent Premonition, hold several world and reserve world titles. And I think she is an excellent example in our series of women making a difference in the world with dollars of just what money can do and how to do it. So please join me in welcoming Lisa. Hi, Lisa. Welcome to the show. I'm thrilled to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you.
So Lisa, I want to start with a question that I have a lot of curiosity about, and so I'm guessing that perhaps my listeners do too. And that is, as the head of the Clark Foundation, you're in charge of development. And in my mind, development is wrapped in with fundraising. What is the distinction between fundraising and development?
Well, that's a great question. You know, when I think about, there's actually a couple of terms in fundraising organizations, and more specifically higher education, is that you have advancement and you have development. Development really encompasses more of the fundraising aspects, where in a advancement shop, you are broadening the type of work that you do into public relations, communications, marketing, and other things. We're a little unusual here at Clark College Foundation because we are a standalone operation that supports our college. So we have our own communications person. She does marketing for us. But we don't go as so far as to do like political lobbying and those types of things on behalf of the college. That would be taken care of by the college. But the development aspects is fundraising. But with development, we also have a fiduciary responsibility to take care of the money that's been entrusted to us. And so even though we're the fundraising arm of the college, it's really important to know that we are a fiduciary to our donors, and they put a lot of trust in us. And so a lot of my job is focused on making sure that we spend the money in the way that it was meant to be spent, and that we see that it's invested appropriately so it can gain a great return, so it can continue to go on and help the college.
And when I think of development, I can't help but tie it into the theme that we're doing this series on, women
Right.
making a difference in the world with dollars, with money. And
Yeah.
both advancement and development have such power in that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do you personally view development and the influence of development?
I think probably the thing that matches my personality the best, I came into this position not having an ounce of fundraising experience at all. So it's pretty scary for an accountant, an introverted accountant, to come into this role and then all of a sudden be expected to lead an organization in these huge fundraising goals. We're currently in the middle of a $35 million campaign. Well, that's a little daunting. But when I take a step back and I look at my role within development, I really, I feel more comfortable recognizing that I'm a matchmaker. I think you know as well as I do that I love puzzles. I love to sit back and look at a problem and say, how can I fix this? What opportunities are available to me? What partners are available to me? And how can I make that work? Not only for the donor and what their objective is, but also for the college. And so when I think of development, it's so different than a person that is going out to, ask for money. And quite frankly, it's pretty rare that I ask for money. It generally is a dialogue that lends itself to a joint conclusion as to how somebody can assist. And it's
Oh, I lost you in the connection for a minute. Can you still hear me?
oh, I know it kind of froze up. Are you
Darn it.
good?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
money isn't something that you ask donors for when you go out. You're looking for.
Generally not. It's a conversation. I try to meet donors where they're at, and many of them, maybe they're not a donor yet. Maybe they are a community leader. Maybe they are an alumnus. But really trying to understand what somebody's objectives are, what pulls at their heartstrings, why they're connecting with the college. And eventually it kind of comes around to, well, what are you interested in? And then trying to figure out ways that we can satisfy their objective. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's a connection with a student or a faculty member, or just bringing back memories of when they were here. And, I think having engagement with the students is so fun because all of us who have been through this, we have so much to share. We have history and experience, and if we can ease that for somebody else, that's a gift in and of itself. So the money just kind of comes along with that. It's a automatic extension. But it's so much less about the money than it is about the connection and the impact that it has on the students and the community as a whole.
Did you, when you were doing accounting, before you were in this role, did you see money as a tool of connection then? What was your view on money then?
Yeah, that's really interesting because just even getting to the foundation was not a traditional route. My career started in hospitality. And so much of the money that was driven in that role was really about the presentation of the hotels, the service that was provided by the hotels, and taking care of the guests. I went from that to go into banking. Well, right there, it was all about the money. And in my particular position that I was in, I was working with businesses. And so I was trying to make that connection to provide funds so that they could meet their own corporate goals. And we were critical partners in making that happen. From there, I went into public accounting, and which was interesting because that was actually more about analyzing things after the money was received and trying to be that partner that helped to maybe push them to the next level or highlight a concern that you could see in the numbers that was coming up that they might not see as an entrepreneur. And so each building block that I went through in, these various occupations that I had are things that I could take to the next position. And what was a common theme there was I was so fortunate because I was always surrounded by these amazing people that were leaders in their own right. And they had completely different ways of analyzing a problem or a situation. And they'd come at it from different directions. And so you could study their basis for how they would do their own position, and I could grab little pieces from each and every one of them as I learned and grew into my own position that I have today. So
you're a problem solver. I know you to be the sort of innovative solution finder.
Yeah.
I think
That's
of you.
Puzzler is me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think of you with
Yeah.
the slogan, I'll get to yes, or we'll get to yes. And
Yes.
so when you said you were surrounded by people who had that problem solving ability that you learned from, it occurs to me that perhaps that was, part of the environment that also attributed to you having that, or you learned from each other or something. It struck me when you said that that's also in you. My question around all that is, when did you begin to feel the connection with money as a tool for the change? Because I see that thread of hospitality to banking to accounting to development.
To be just completely honest with you, I think I was born with it. Having been raised in the family that I was, I come from a long line of accountants, and quite frankly, I never wanted to be one because of that. Kind of got drugged into that field. But having lived that for so many years and being kind of having Red Lion in my blood that way, I worshiped my dad. He was just such a role model in my life. And I saw the struggles that he went through, and I saw how wildly successful he was. And so when I finally got around to saying, okay, I'm going to college, what am I going to college in? Well, first and foremost, I said, I'm not going to be an accountant. Lo and behold, I am an accountant. Not practicing, but am accountant. But I knew there was really nowhere else for me to go but business. It was just part of my DNA. And so everything after that point, when I graduated from University of Oregon, really was steps that helped to me discover where my interests were leading me. And that's where I think it's probably the most fascinating as to how I ended up here. Because, when I was a kid and when I was in college, I wouldn't have known what a foundation was.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a student caller. I didn't get involved with the foundation at any of my colleges that I went to. And so I had no idea what that field was about. my first experience with nonprofits really was through accounting, the CPA firm. I was with Deloitte and Touche, and then eventually went to Moss Adams. And so I got to work on several nonprofits. So that kind of led me into a more mission-based type of organization than your typical corporate. I did the typical, 3 to 5 years in any one organization, and then you kind of get restless and you move on. And it wasn't until the opportunity here at the foundation opened up that I even considered working for a nonprofit. That in and of itself was interesting because I was really scared of coming to the foundation because I didn't know if it was enough for me, if it would hold enough interest in diversity in what I was going to do to keep my attention. Every career path that I went on, I was constantly working with different people, different industries, different clients, different accounting challenges, or meeting new people in hospitality. So in banking, it was all different industries. And I thought, gosh, am I going to lock myself into a foundation that it's going to be day in and day out the same thing? One monthly closing after another, and then I'm going to be wondering why I took on the role. To my surprise, that has not happened, and 20 years later, I'm still here. And there's days I kind of wish for a little bit of that boredom, but
not with a $35+ million campaign on your wing. So you had referred to it being an atypical entry when you went from accounting to the foundation. How so?
Well, my role originally was CFO. So from the standpoint of managing the books and doing the financial aspects of the foundation, that was the same. And I knew I could control that. I knew I would succeed in the challenges provided to me from that perspective. But as I grew in my role, and my president at the time was really the only guy within the foundation that was out developing relationships and bringing in the gifts. And so he would get things started, and then he's like, Lisa, come along with me because I'm going to pass this off to you. And they weren't always, solidified, and the challenges worked out before they were handed off to me. So what it did is it provided me an opportunity to explore things that I had never envisioned before. And that's where that slogan came from, was we don't jump to say no. We work really hard to get to yes, because it can be as simple as somebody coming in saying, I want to give you this, and your flags immediately go up and you think, well, there's this, and this wrong with that particular situation. But how can we put that idea aside and really get back to what the true objective is? And that's the part that I love about this job. It's because it combines my analytical brain with my love for puzzles and creativity, and that ability to get the reward when somebody makes that gift. They are super excited about what they've been able to do at the institution, and I can walk around the campus and see the impact that it's made.
And you do it so well. You've been acknowledged, as I read in your bio, internationally within your industry and beyond your region. You do it just
it's been very humbling, overwhelming at times. Yeah.
What would you like to see, not just in your own industry and fields, but what would you like to see in general for development? Where do you think it could go with all those solutions just laying out there to be made and had?
Yeah. I'm actually going to broaden that a little bit.
Please do.
And I would say my greatest wish at the moment is that higher education would take a very, very serious look at how they do business. Never before has higher education been challenged the way it is today by their value proposition. And that speaks to us, because if a donor doesn't feel like they're going to get the value of the gift that they made, or if they have a sense that they've just spent however many dollars to put a student through school with their scholarship, if that student graduates and isn't able to get gainful employment, there's something really, really wrong here.
Mm-hmm.
And so through my work with CASE, which is the Council in Advancement and Support of Education, we're really looking at those issues, and the fact that we do have people going to private schools, or Ivy League schools or community colleges, and they're coming out, and even though we have some of the lowest unemployment we've ever seen, the skill sets are not matching up. So that's a message.
Mm-hmm.
It's a huge message.
Mm-hmm.
And so where I feel that I can make the most significant difference here in the role of philanthropy and development, which again, as you asked before, how does that really differ from fundraising? The development piece really relates to how can I further the college's mission and its ability to accomplish that mission by partnering with people in the community. And so that's where I think we can make a significant difference. But we are kind of stifled in many ways in education. We're used to doing things certain ways. We have accrediting bodies that are forcing us to do things certain ways.
Mm-hmm.
But I think in time, I would like to see the community leaders, the industries become even closer wed to the things that the colleges are doing. So a much more skill-based and vocationally based programming.
And that sounds like a powerful template that could be modified in other locations.
Absolutely. And truthfully, it's all over the globe that people are addressing this issue, because it's, to take it even to a greater extreme for example purposes, you're talking about our next mortgage crisis could be student debt.
Right.
If a student comes out of school and they have this huge bill to pay, and they don't have a career or a employment opportunity that's going to pay that off in a reasonable point in time, then you just got a ball and chain around your leg.
Exactly.
And that, who is that really helping? And it's something our politicians are going to have to grapple with, our industry is going to have to grapple with, and with that, you've got every change that's going on with technology and trying to keep current. And so it's a daunting question. And we're going to have to be much more willing and quicker about making those changes to adjust.
So coming up with a solution that addresses one piece that has, I'm picturing it like a tentacle, a positive tentacle outreaching and calming, solving many pieces of the problem, the challenge. Yeah. And you mentioned that it's impactful all over the globe, and you have traveled internationally to actually see that possibility in action as well, haven't you?
Yeah, most recently I was fortunate. We're looking at an advanced manufacturing program here at Clark, and we reached out from the direction of Bowen, actually, and Siemens, and they told us to connect with a school in Sheffield, England. We did visit the school, and the mirror project that they put together there was a public-private partnership. It was a combination of an industry that needed support It was an area of England that was an industrial site that looked like an environmental hazard, quite frankly. And they were able to turn that entire thing around. And now it's some of the highest valued industrial land in all of England. And that particular site is now providing opportunities not only to kids coming out of their high school programs, but also students coming in at a very high level, PhDs and master's programs that are working hand in hand with some of the biggest manufacturers in the world. And to see that they're doing that research and they are making a difference and they're learning at the same time. The students that are coming from high school, they're getting paid to go to that school. Not only do they have their schooling paid for by a sponsored company, but they're also getting a minimum wage. So they're getting, at least some spending money. They are being treated as if it's a job. They clock in the morning, they clock out at night, they check in with their employer. I mean, it's those kinds of really different and interesting ways to partner with education that is more directly applicable to the workforce, which after all, that's why we're here, is to train people to go out and get, a workable wage position. And so what a fabulous way to make that partnership work. And I think, the US has to start looking at a lot more options like that.
That's
really exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. As you're talking about these changes and these possibilities, I'm curious, is there more of a call for jobs in development as a field also?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like I said, when I went to school, I didn't even know what it was. But there are actually schools throughout the country that offer actual bachelor's degrees in fundraising or nonprofit management. The most well-known of those schools is Indiana, the University of Indiana, and it has the Eli Lilly, I think it's Eli Lilly, foundation that supports them and is just super well known. They actually take their program on the road and help to provide services all over the country. So it's a career now. It absolutely is a career. It's not just a stopping place anymore.
So if someone were looking to get into the field, what sort of characteristics? Because I see more interest in using the potential of money as a tool and people asking, how can I do that? But not really knowing how. So for younger people searching and seeing, oh, this is something tangible, what sort of characteristics do you think would make a good candidate for a program like that?
I think probably the thing that speaks the greatest volume is students or candidates that are looking at getting into this field generally have an internal drive that there is something bigger than just a paycheck. And I didn't come to that realization. Like I said, I went through a number of different industries. And when I received my award last year, it was interesting because as I was reflecting on my life and where I'm at now, I said to the case audience, I said, I've always had jobs. And I was successful at the various jobs that I went to, but I never knew what a career was until I came here. And I think that the difference for me was that it's so much more than coming in and, checking the boxes off and saying, okay, I've done this, I've done this, I've done this, and I've met my goals with respect to a matrix. It's about walking out there and seeing a student. It's about talking to a student and comforting them when they find out that their donor is no longer with us, and to feel that impact. That's a rare thing to get. And, I've been so fortunate in that I touch a lot of areas on campus. I have been involved with opening up several buildings and campuses within our college. And all of those are really great. But it's not until it's populated and you see it working and you start to hear the stories that those create that make it so real. And that's where my financial background and my interest in making things work and being creative has pushed me to be motivated to never give up. And in working with you, Jan, over all these years, you know how frustrated I can get. That is part of the job, unfortunately. But those frustrations always get put aside when you work so hard and you finally see it come to fruition. And that's what's kept me here for 20 years.
So, when you were saying something greater, I was thinking that's really no different from a lot of human development sort of positions.
Right.
But the
Absolutely.
money, but the
it's
money.
Like a nurse.
What? Like what?
So, example for like a nurse.
Yeah.
Like a nurse.
Like a nurse, like
yeah.
Doctor, anything. But the difference that I see is still there's that money factor. There's a tool. There's a real specific tool, right?
Yeah.
So
there is. Yeah.
Also, people skills. And for example, a surgeon can go into an operating room. They want to change the world, perhaps through health. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't want to talk to you. I'll just put you to sleep.
I'll save your life. I'll be the best surgeon and save 20 zillion lives. But maybe I don't want to talk to everybody I save. I'm being dramatic, but there are differences, aren't there? Yeah.
Oh, totally. And that's the thing that scared me about this job, because even though I love people and in all my other careers I had to work with people, but in this job you have to be on. And as a natural introvert, I mean, it really pushes me outside that comfort zone throughout the entire day. So needless to say, by the time I get home, I'm a little tired. And yet I've grown into it enough that I relish it now, and I do enjoy the relationships that I've built through this.
That you mentioned that is one of the challenges. What would you say is the biggest challenge in the work that you do?
Yeah. Well, I think probably the lack of resources, and that seems it's sometimes hard for people to understand, because they look at it, Clark College Foundation, how can you have lack of resources? You have over $100 million that we manage today. But much of that money is restricted to certain purposes. Much of it can't be touched at all. We can only use the earnings off of it. And so you're constantly balancing, what you're managing for what it was given for. But that's today. What about 5 years in the future, 20 years in the future? We have to be prepared for that. We have to be aligning ourselves with that. And there will never be enough money for all the needs that are created within the college or the community as a whole. And one thing that I can say that I'm proud about is that when I approach someone, I don't just make it about the college. but I try to look at the community health and welfare as a whole. And so we have a significant issue, as many communities do, with homelessness, with food insecurities, and other things. So how do we solve that issue? We have students that live in their cars in our parking lot. So what can we do to support them in that? So that's where my puzzle making comes in, is that I try to make those matches with my colleagues in other nonprofit fields, because we wouldn't ever want to take those scarcely provided resources and duplicate the efforts. How can we come together as professionals and do that together and leverage those dollars to solve an even greater need? And so I think that that's really the key, is to understand how the power of the money and the goals can work together in order to solve some of the challenges that are in front of us. And you'll never, I mean, it's like federal government, you'll never have enough, but you have to determine what those priorities are.
When
and that's hard. It can be really hard.
Determining the priorities is one of the challenges also. I'm curious, when you say resources, what specifically are you referring to? Are you meaning just money, or what specifically?
Well, resources can come in so many ways. For example, with Siemens right now, Siemens is one of the largest advanced manufacturers in the world. They are headquartered in Germany. As we work with them, we're really looking at a huge impact to our institution by them providing us their software. Okay. If we would have to go out on the open market and buy that software, we wouldn't be able to afford it. Mm-hmm. But if they can provide that to us, it is a huge impact to the foundation and to the college without a dollar being spent. Yes, it's inventory for them, so obviously it's a cost to them, but it's far different than transfer of currency. Mm-hmm. Another example would be, I work with a lot of donors on real estate. So it may not be a transfer of money or a stock or something that's equivalent to cash. It could be, some sort of arrangement where they're going to sell us their property at a bargain purchase. Mm-hmm. But it's something that we need, and it's a benefit for them too, and it meets their objectives. So there's all sorts of different strategies that you can use that satisfies the goals and the objectives that we're trying to accomplish.
And that's one of the reasons I was wanting you to explain a little bit, because when you said there's a shortage of resources, our brains can go into so many different explanations mm-hmm. for that. And in your answer, you already showed solutions just by explaining what they were, which makes more things possible. So I really appreciated hearing that explanation.
What one other thing that people don't always gravitate to, but just like yourself, you are a coach. So a coach, we could partner up with one of our however many classes that we have going on at Clark and invite someone like yourself to come in and just talk about their journey. You didn't have a straight line to get to coaching. And I think that you went through your own transformation as to why you do what you do today. I think that story alone is such a valuable resource to students. I've had the privilege of communicating with and just talking to classes, and I think the best thing that I can say to them is don't limit your options.
Yeah. And in fact, that's one of the reasons I started the podcast, is because in my experience hearing so many people through my lifetime, there is no straight path. There is no straight path.
Yeah.
You'll catch up at some point with the curve.
Yeah. And just think of how many things that we wouldn't get to experience
Right.
if we didn't take that side road,
Yeah.
you know,
And from what I've observed, if we don't go to the side will come and meet us.
yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah,
we have a choice there, and I'd rather
yeah,
make the choice when possible. So,
yeah,
anyway,
absolutely. Yeah,
um, so if you were to look backwards at
yeah.
yourself now,
Hmm.
this isn't that long ago, so I'm not going to ask you to go
Oh,
when you
you're
were a
sweet.
child. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm curious what you did with your money when you were little. When you were a little girl, were you a saver? Did you spend your money? What'd you do? I'm curious about how people did that when they were little.
You know, that's interesting because I was a privileged kid. I don't think I came from a wealthy family. It wasn't until we got, when I got to be a little older, and I'm the baby of the family, and so my sisters would answer this differently. We were always well off. We never needed anything. What we needed, we had. But we didn't, in my mind, live extravagantly. Um, but I was taken very good care of. I don't ever remember. It's funny. I didn't get allowances. I didn't, none of that. And so, as much as my background is financial in nature, I don't believe my folks really ever taught us that. And that's kind of weird for me to say, but it really dawns on me that way. Maybe one of the reasons that with my kids, and actually I didn't give them allowances either, but I tried to build in aspects of philanthropy and doing good by others that I didn't have when I grew up. And so I remember I used to put in a $50 bill into their Christmas stocking. And the instructions with the $50 bill was that you couldn't keep it, that the
Ah,
$50 bill had to be donated to somebody else. And they had to come forward, and each kid would say, well, this is what I want to donate to, and this is why. And I'm still donating to St. Jude's because of that. Yeah, because Megan had this affiliation with the kids at St. Jude's.
yeah.
My son went towards soccer in underprivileged African communities, I think was his. We didn't do that for too long, but it was a good exercise and something that I didn't get to experience as a kid. So,
How fun for them also to be able to research and learn. And because I do think that's
yeah,
part of the interest in you deciding where you want to donate.
absolutely.
And to do that as a
Absolutely.
child, how exciting. What a wonderful
Yeah,
gift
it
you
was
gave
pretty
him.
fun. Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was pretty fun.
Well, that's
Yeah.
inspiring.
So,
Who inspires you?
well, you do every time I talk to you. I
Thank you.
just have to go on record. This
Thank
woman, as my coach, has
you.
pushed me and challenged me in so many ways. But in all fairness, you have taken me through good times and bad. You have challenged me and inspired me in so many ways. And as I look back over the years that we've worked together, how much I've grown in that period of time. Like I said before, my parents were significant figures in my life. My family all came from a long line of accountants, but my dad left the practice fairly early in his career and went to work for Red Lion. And so, as I watched him as an executive of Red Lion and saw what he did, I didn't understand it at the time, but saw how successful he was. It just really developed that interest in me to want to make him proud. And the other aspect with my dad was my sister started us on wanting horses. And that's another thing that you and I have in common, are horses. And so at 8 years old, I started riding horses and started showing. And we owned pintos and paints. And over the years, I just continued with that. That was something that my dad and I had a special bond with, because it was an extremely risky thing for me to do. I have a very rare bone condition that I break bones easily. So to put me on horseback on something that you can't predict what they're going to do was scary in nature. And but they never said you can't do anything. They would say, "You want to do what?" And then they would say, "Okay," and then they'd kind of contemplate it for a while, but generally they'd give in, and they would provide me really good equipment. They would provide me lessons and all those things. So I could be a kid and not be the kid in the rubber room that never got out to experience everything. And for that, I am extremely, extremely thankful.
You didn't have to wear a padded suit and stay inside because you would break bones. Yeah. That is a gift.
And unfortunately, I've had a few.
Yeah.
Yeah, far too many.
Do you see any connection between horses and the work you do now?
Yes. And the word that comes to mind is determination. My career with horses, although it was a hobby, it was really more of a personal drive and a commitment. I have learned over the years that I'm very competitive, but I'm only competitive in those things where I feel like I have a chance to excel at it. I can remember when I was living in the Bay Area, I used to do a lot of running. Well, I was never going to be a competitive runner. There was no way. I wasn't fast enough, but I did it because it was exercise. I enjoyed it. It was good for my mind. It was good for my body. But if I get into something that I feel like I can excel at it, I'm determined, and I'm not going to give up until I prove to myself that I've accomplished it. And I'm happy to say that I did that. For several years, I was ranked as one of the top amateurs in the country, as both in pinto and in paint. And it holds a special place in my heart. Unfortunately, my body can't take it today, but I will always have that piece of me that loves what I was able to accomplish. And unfortunately, my world-class gelding is no longer with us, but I look at his picture every day, and I think of the special moments that we had together.
Yeah. What are you going to excel at next? Not job, I'm not the campaign, not specific thing, but big thing.
Yeah, big thing. I'm 58 years old, and I am contemplating what does Lisa 2.0 look like? What does that mean? And I'm 58, so it's not like I'm retiring tomorrow or anything, but there's more to life. And I love to travel. I love to explore, to try new things. I'm a scuba diver, so I've been to a number of places, but that intrigues me to go do that. I also think about the day that I do walk out of the door from Clark, and how will I keep my mind engaged? How will I continue to be a part of my community? And certainly not inhibit the next leader that comes into this role, but support them in any way they want to be supported, but maybe look to different ways that I can give back, whether it be through kids organizations or other ailments that the community needs support in. And obviously, through my experience here, I have a lot to give in my expertise, my finances, my treasures. So those are all things that I'm kind of contemplating. But for the near term, I really want to gain more balance in what I do. I'm working on getting my health back to a better situation, and finding some new far out lands to discover.
Do you think with the next stage, whenever that is, even if it's in 10 years, I think of development as a attribute as much as a role. Do you think you'll take development on to your next phase of life? Beyond fundraising.
Yeah, and I think, and that's the beauty of development, just like the beauty of banking or hospitality. Those skill sets are so transferable. Mm-hmm. For me, development is relationship building. You need that in everything you do, from getting along with your neighbors to, finding new friends. One thing that I do a lot of is I travel, and I don't necessarily travel with a companion. And so for me, that's part of the fun, is to go somewhere else and just immerse myself in the culture, find out, who these people are and how their culture differs from mine, and explore what that means. And so there's a part of me, and I think I may have told you this before, I've always had this dream in my mind, and being able to walk into an airport, right? And having everything blacked out, so you have no idea. And of course, it has to be an international airport, but just to board a plane and not have any idea where you're going and get off and be just like totally surprised. I think that would be so fun.
You could do that. You really could. You might have to I'm thinking from a practical standpoint, you couldn't be blacked out for safety's sake, right? But you could have a companion go to the airport with you to keep you secret, to keep the location secret. And then you'd board. You might have to put earplugs in or something. I just think it's possible.
A way to do it.
Yes. Yes.
Don't you think that would be really fun?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be a blast. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's in your future.
Yeah.
What would you like people? I'd love you to share 3 things about money that you know that you'd like to share with listeners.
3 things about money. Mm-hmm. It's a means to an end. Money is a necessity, but money doesn't make you happy. Money can support you, but it can't buy, like I said, it can't buy you happiness. And I think no matter where you're at in your own financial position, it's important to assess yourself and have that check-in on a regular basis. I know I'm guilty, as anybody else would be, that you might, go buy something because it makes you feel really good in that moment. Just like a piece of chocolate gives you those endorphins to make you feel happy. But it's short-lived. And so as I get older, I'm finding joy in what money can do for me instead of what it's getting me. And so I'm trying to be more cognizant that it's the memories that it's entitling me to, it's the impacts that I can make, it's the journeys and the experiences of something that I wouldn't normally get to have. And And then the joy of giving too. Um, my folks, as I went back and said, we were all okay. We were well off to the extent we weren't hurting for anything. But my mom and dad were not philanthropic. It's interesting as I look back because I guess I didn't know about foundations and not-for-profits because they really weren't involved with any. My dad was an Elks Club member, so whatever he did there with his grand poobah hat and all those types of things that they wear didn't resonate to us as kids. But as I look back today, when I got to the foundation, we're all girls. So Dad had 3 girls. And when the last of us go away, there's nobody that carries our family name anymore because we don't have a male to carry the name. And so I said to my parents and I said to my sister, I'd really like to have something that memorializes the family. And so I established an endowment here, and I've been working on that, for a number of years. And we give scholarships out from that endowment. When I approached my parents with that gift, that was their Christmas gift, my dad looked at me and he said, well, why would you want to do that? I thought, well, that's a weird question, but it wasn't until the first scholarship reception came around and I invited him to come, him and my mom and my sister, because she thought it was a great idea, so she started contributing too. And I don't know how my scholarship coordinator did it, but she picked the perfect student. There was this, beautiful young lady who was an accounting student that was just all bright-eyed and just so eager to take on the world. And she won my dad's heart. And he walked out of there and he looked at my mom and he said, from this day forward, we're contributing to that account.
You made it tangible.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
Yeah. And and it just was never a place in our family before that. So,
and
my sister is very philanthropic.
It's interesting. I've heard, and I'm sure you have read so much more about this than I have, but there is that research about how women use money to change their community and change the world, and men use it in different ways. And genders just think of money in different ways and use it differently. Yeah. And it's been shown they also give differently. A man might give money, but he might give money in, and I'm just pulling this out of a hat, I'm not reciting from research, but I'm also giving examples of people I know. They might give real generously to people they see who are hurting and just give that way, where a woman would give to a cause that she really believes in, that she knows is making a difference in an area. It's just a different approach. But
it is, and you direct the way that we deal with individual donors, whether they're male or female. You approach them differently, and that gets back to what their objective is. And then as couples, when we will meet a donor, it's really important for us to meet the couple, because a family that gives needs to join in on what it is they're trying to accomplish. Sometimes they will say, no, that really is my husband's thing, or that's my wife's thing. But for the most part, it really is something that they try to do together. And sometimes, this isn't always the case, but sometimes the transaction is more transactional in the case of working with men, because they come from a very business-oriented background many times, and so it becomes much more structured. where a lot of times from the female perspective, it becomes a nurturing type of activity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting.
Stereotypical, but it's
Right.
but you do see some trends that way.
Trends and research and all that. Yeah, not.
Yeah.
Yeah. So before we close, I want to ask you if there's anything that I didn't ask that you'd like to add.
I would say that just like we talked earlier, is that be open to new opportunities, learn and grow every day. I'm in higher education, but I believe in lifelong education, and that's one of the things that I talk to my kids about, is that regardless of the fact that I have advanced degrees, I have to get continuing education all the time. For me to be relevant, for me to understand what's going on, I have to read. I have to know what's going on in my community, and I have to get involved. And probably the one thing that I would say is that, and I encourage my staff to do, is that we are so fortunate as a nonprofit to have people care in our mission, and they give us their time, their talent, and their treasure. We should not take advantage of that. We're people too, and we need to give out to our community just like people give to us. And so I challenge my staff. It's a requirement. They're evaluated on whether or not they have satisfied that particular goal. And they need to get involved. It may be, their school PTA, or it could be, serving on a board. Whatever it is, it doesn't matter, but play a role in your community and make a difference. You will get more in return than no matter how much you give. It's just something it's a feeling like nothing else.
It's so beautiful. It's one of those basic tenets of giving and receiving that is sometimes overlooked, but so precious.
Yeah, absolutely.
What a gift you're giving your staff and allowing them the time to do
that. Yeah.
Encouraging and allowing. Thank you, Lisa. It's been just a joy and a pleasure. And I will look forward to talking to you soon. Thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, the honor has been all mine. You're a delight. Love you much.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.